What's up guys? Today we're going to wire an M unit. Let's get to work.
Welcome to Saturday's Wrench. Yeah. Wrench.
Alright guys, so you can see I got a wiring harness made for me. Just kidding, this is my old wiring harness and this is basically garbage. I started from scratch. I got a new wiring harness made and I went to the fine folks at Spark Moto for this. They did a pretty good job. It's a pretty nice wiring harness. In retrospect, I probably could have just tackled this job myself. I'm a little disappointed that I spent the money to have someone else make me something that I could have easily made myself. After I did a bunch of research, I figured out that making a wiring harness is not that hard. You just need a few bits of tools, a few bits of equipment, and you can really honestly make this yourself. I'm not trying to downplay the guys at Spark Moto. They do a fantastic job. There is a link in the description if you want to check them out. They do custom wiring harnesses and they will ship to you. They do PayPal. They do really great customer service over there. So that being said, the first thing I want to do is clean up the connections coming into the M unit. They did a few sloppy things that I think could have been a little bit better. And to be fair, they haven't worked too much with the M unit in particular, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I do want to clean up some of the connections going in and out of the M unit. I really want to set them up so that it will last a long time, and I'll show you guys that right now, what I want to clean up. Now in the previous video I went through my wiring diagram, and I really recommend that you go back and check that video out. Here's a link right here for that video. I really strongly recommend you go check it out, see how I went through my wiring process and how I came up with my own custom wiring diagram. Now when I ordered this wiring harness, they asked me to go ahead and send them out my M unit, which was fine. When the harness came back, there were some things on the harness, the way it was connected, that I just thought were a little sloppy, and I just couldn't let that slide in my build here, because I knew that after a little bit of time that was going to cause a problem. So here's a closer look at what I was talking about with the poor connection on the M unit. And again, those guys probably just didn't know because they're not familiar with working with M units, but if you read through the manual, it does say to use ferrules for the end of these connectors and even some heat shrink here. So what I'm going to do is just make this connection a lot better. So you can see here it's just a basically stripped back wire, and that was just plugged right into the M unit. When I got all the wires are just plugged right into the M unit. Now if you can do it this way. I don't recommend doing it this way at all. Do not be lazy with this and do it properly, because it's just going to last a lot longer, and after time, just not even that much time, these wires are going to suffer from fatigue, fail, and this wire, if it moves around in here for any reason, it's just going to break. These copper strands are way too fragile to be left clamped into this M unit here. So I'm going to start fresh with this wire because I have a feeling some of the strands might have broke off. Now this is a great little tool that you want to get. It's a wire stripper, an automatic wire stripper. You can control the length at which you want your wire to be stripped, and that one simple pull and it automatically strips the wire there. You can see that. It's pretty great. So again, you could see that one end is kind of ballooned out a bit, so I'm going to go ahead, put that end in first, slide it in there. Now I'll take my ferrule crimper here, so there you go. Now that's a really secure connection. See that? It's not coming out. You can see that's a lot more clean than just the exposed wire. So now I have my heat shrink here, and you can get all these tools. I personally bought these tools from Revival Cycles. They were very helpful in helping me out with my wiring diagram and helping me choose the right tools and just get the right stuff. So again, they sell these great dual and single wall heat shrink, and so I'm just going to use a single wall heat shrink here, just a little piece. So I just have my heat shrink here. I'm just going to cover the end. So there you go. Now So take a look at that compared to something like that. I mean, you make the decision. What one would you rather have on your bike? I think you're going to go ahead and pick this one. So now this can fit into this terminal here, no problem. And that's a really secure connection. It's got a little bit of play. It can move around a little bit. It's not going to suffer from any fatigue damage. Feeling really good about this. I'm going to go ahead and do that to all the input and output wires here and just really clean all this up. And then I'm going to go ahead and start wiring this bad boy up. So I'll be back once I get all these fixed out. Alright, things are going quite swimmingly with this application here. Now you can see all the wire ends, all the terminal ends. They made them all beautiful. So that is a ferrule with a little bit of heat shrink on the end, and that is just the way to go with this. So step one, make sure your terminal connections all look like this. And if you're using any type of terminal connection on the bike, I strongly recommend using that procedure there. I'm going to go ahead and start plugging these wires into the M unit here, just again following my wiring diagram, and I'm going to concentrate on the output section of the wiring diagram. So I'm going to work my way from the top down and just start finding some of these wires. So I have my blue right turn signal here, and then I'm going to go through, plug these all in, and I'm going to add a little bit of dielectric grease just on the terminal ends themselves. So just applying a little bit of that dielectric grease. What this is going to do is just help prevent corrosion or anything like that, and just really make this connection the most secure. So I'm going to go through with all these connections, adding a little bit of the dielectric grease, then sticking it into the terminal and tightening everything down. Grease has been applied to all of the connections here. Now I'm just going to start working my way down from the top. I'm going to start looking at my wiring diagram again, and I know that blue goes into the output of blue of the right turn signal. The starter output I don't have yet. That's going to be to come. So I'm going to move down to the horn. I know that pink is the horn. Again, just keeping in mind that trying to organize my wires so nothing's crisscrossing or causing any problems. My horn's in place. Next is the left turn signal. I'm going to start tightening these down as I go. So there you go. You can see nice clean connection here, nice and tight, and it has wiggle room to play around. That's not going to fail from metal fatigue. That has some play to move around a bit, vibrations in the bike and whatever else. So I'm going to go through the rest of the terminals and connect this up. Now you can see here that everything is set up. All the connections are in there. They're all nice and secure. They look pretty good. I have my config wire for my M button. So now all that's missing is my starter motor and my start output, and I need some more auxiliary output. So this auxiliary power is basically power it's called switched power. So when the bike is switched on with the ignition key or whatever, that's when that power is supplied. 12 volts is supplied through these wires. So I need a few more outputs because I need one to go to my my tachometer, which is this wire right here. That's going to the front of the bike, but that only leaves me with two other inputs. One going to the coils, one going to the ignition modulator, and one going to the alarm, and one going to the tach. So I need one more output. I only have two here, and I need to build a third one here. So I'm going to attempt to do that myself. I have I cut off a piece of wire from the wire kit that I bought, and I have this bullet connector. So what I'm going to do is just crimp this on to the end of the wire here like this, and then I'll have a bullet connector on this side that'll connect into this like this, creating three more outputs basically. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do that now, and then crimp on this bullet connector at the end here like that. you need a special crimp tool for this. It's called an open barrel crimper, and what it does, it just crimps and makes like kind of like an M over the wire, and that's the proper way there. You want to do that. You want to get the wire in there and then part of the rubber on the next crimp. So you put it face down into the crimper like this, and at the bottom there, the crimper will actually fold the little tabs over itself. Kind of makes like a little M shape. And you can see how that works there. Sorry if it's not completely in focus, but you can see how that works there. So I have one bullet connector ready to go. Now I just have to put a single one on this side and we'll be laughing. Now there probably is a certain procedure that guys use. I'm not a professional here, but just trying to make this work the best I can. But like, I'm just a rookie here. I'm learning too, so if you guys see me doing something stupid or whatever, just be gentle. Let me know in the comments. I'm always up for a discussion. This isn't the be-all end-all of how to do this stuff, but you know, I thought we could learn together, and that's what it's all about. So I guess it's easier to get the crimp in there. Set up the little bullet in there first, then slide your wire through, and then crimp it up. And that seemed to work pretty good. Oh, that's pretty good. That's all crimped up. There's a little mistake I made. Put your plastic on first and then crimp your wire over that. Then you could slide it through like that. So I'm going to go ahead, before I just lost the connector on there, trying to slide this on. So get your plastic on first. Hey, we're all learning, right? Make mistakes here and there. So I'm going to learn from my mistake here and just get my plastic on first. Slide that down the wire and go ahead and crimp my little thing on. So these are fragile. You got to be careful with these. I can slide my plastic over this. So there you go. So now I built my own little connector here. So now I can take this guy, plug it into here. So that's the alarm, the ignition coils, and the modulator. So that's all ready to go. Continuing on, I need to make a power wire that comes from my aux. As you can see here, that comes out of the aux output, the auxiliary output, and goes up into my ignition coils. And that powers both the left and the right coils. So I need to make a power wire that can complete that. What I have here is a thicker gauge wire. So that's going to be good for my ignition coils, and I need to create one long one, and then I need to splice into this one to go into the left coil or right coil. So I am fitting Dyna mini coils on this bike, so they come with these little bag of parts here, and that's what the connection I need to put on. I'm going to go ahead and build this up. I set aside the Moto Gadget M unit for now, and that's just chilling. So on one end I need a bullet connector, a male bullet connector. So I have this guy on one end. That's going to plug into the auxiliary power female connector that I just set up. You saw me do that. Make sure I get my plastic this time. Slide the plastic on there first. And I'm going to strip the wire back. Set this up in my crimp here. Get my wire in there. You can see I have my bullet connector on one side. I'm just going to slip my plastic over that. So the Dyna mini coils they want you to be able to put these terminals on the end of this, and that's just going to create the most secure connection for this type of coil here. So what I'm going to have to do is attach this to the end of my other end of my wire here. So this is my power wire. I have one end with the bullet connector that's going to connect to the aux output from the M unit. Now with this one I have to trim this back and crimp it inside this terminal, and I have a little crimper for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I just twisted it my way in there. Now I'm just going to use this crimper here. It has a terminal crimp here. You can see that it says terminal. Pretty sure that's the one. I could be wrong. Sorry if I am. Again, I am a rookie at this stuff. So I crimped that, and that's looking pretty good. So you can see that's a nice secure connection. And that's looking pretty sweet to me. So I have my power wire for my coils, but now I need to splice into it because I need to split the power going from one to the other coil. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So this is my next section of wire here that I'm going to plug into the other coil. So this is going to split out like a Y, I guess, like that. And so I just spliced in to the wire here. So what I'm going to do is just cross braid these over each other and then solder it and then put some heat shrink over that, and I think that'll be good. So you can see I've crossed them over each other like that. So now I'm going to solder that and then heat shrink over that. So there you go. You can see here that I split up the wire. I got a good soldered connection here, and then one will plug into one positive input of the coil, and this is for the other one, like that. So I'll have it on the right side of the bike, so this will reach across. So I put a 90-degree little plug here so that'll just fit in like that. So that's looking all good. Now I just have to bunch this wire. So this wire is all ready to go. This is my power wire for my coils. Now I just need to bunch up the wires together for coming from the modulator into the negative input on the coils. So these have to bunch them together, and then I'm going to put this in its own separate little wiring loom, and that's going to sit on the right side of the bike. So I'm going to go ahead and put the connectors on the yellow and blue wires coming from the modulator into the ignition coils. Get those going. Okay, so you can see this is the power. This is a bunch of cables for my electronic ignition. It comes already with this connector, and that just plugs into the modulator. Now the two green wires, as you can see from the wiring diagram, they go out right onto the battery ground. So that's these two wires here. It has a ring terminal built right in. That's perfect. It's already comes like that. And then with the blue, yellow, and red wires, the blue and yellow need to be connected to the coils, the negative side of the coils. The yellow one goes on the left coil, the blue one goes on the right coil. Now I have to set these up so that the terminals, with the terminals here, so that it can be easily plugged into the coil. So I'm going to go ahead and get that going now. So I have this little wire loom here. Looks pretty small, but if you press on it, you can see it expands quite a bit. So it's able to go up probably up to about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead, slide these through here now. So this is an easier way to do it. It's like a snake, kind of just pull it back and push it forward. Beauty, bud. Look at this. So I have my two right coil inputs, negative, positive, and then that'll sit on the right side like that, and then this will swing over across the frame, boom, into the left coil. So I got some heat shrink on the top of the wiring loom. That's double wall, so just nice and thick, so it's nice and secure there. And now I just have to do this side, so I just have to figure out the length. So I slid on my heat shrink before I did this section. So yeah, that's a little tricky thing you gotta remember. But now I just have to cut this loom down a little bit, probably to here, and then I have my wires all ready to go. They're going to get plugged into the modulator. So I have to keep in mind that I need some flex, so I'm going to have to cut it pretty low down here so that I'm able to put the heat shrink on and then not affect too much of the flex. So I want to be able to put these in different positions inside the bike. So now with this, you see I cut down the loom a bit, so I'm going to cover the end of that ugly loom there with a little bit of the heat shrink. So there you go. So now I have my power wire. I switched power for the coil here. My negative inputs from the modulator going to my coils. And then my ground wire for my modulator, and then my power wire for my modulator, which I still need to put a bullet connector on. So this is going to run along the right side of the bike. This is a sweet little loom I just made. See, you can make this stuff. It's not that hard. People want to sell you these looms for hundreds of dollars, and I just made one, and it's not that hard. And that's all looking good, guys. So I'm going to go ahead, add the bullet connector on the end of this. Alright guys, now that I have the wiring harness pretty much ready to go, the main wiring harness pretty much ready to go, I need to think about my switches and everything. So I have my M switches here. You could see these. This is just half of it. Also, I took it apart. This will fit on the bars, and they're little click type buttons. So these are my controls. So basically on the left perch, on the left handlebar, they'll sit up against each other like that. It's pretty cool. Looks pretty nice. It's gotta look really nice on the bars. But the only thing is, and again, like Spark Moto, good job and everything getting these together, but he added the bullet connectors onto the ends. How am I supposed to get that through the bars, bud? Like now I have to drill an extra big hole for that, or disconnect them all and do them again, which is kind of annoying. I'm going to go ahead now. I have my bars. I set all this up on the bike. I sat on the bike and I got my riding position, and I just with a marker I put a little dot right here, and I'm going to drill into this. This is the right bar, so I only need one hole for this because I don't have any controls sitting on here, just my throttle and my master cylinder. Nice little hole there. And you can see that. Just a nice little exit hole. Now I have to deburr that, make sure that's important. You don't want your wires rubbing up against the edges of that metal, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to do that to the other bar, and we'll get these switches and everything ready to be installed. Okay, as you can see, I have the bar set up. This is my riding position. It's good. I sat on the bike and made sure. And then I have this little piece of string through it. You could, I mean, there's probably other ways to do this, but this is just the way I'm doing it. And I will be fitting on some bar end mirrors here too, so I have to make sure this is the housing for that, kind of where it sits on. So I have to make sure I go through this first. Kind of stick these together like that. Now what I'm going to do is get in a position where I could tie this around these wires, making sure not to pull it through the other side. There we go. Wires successfully fished through. Beautiful. And I have signals. So that's good. Those are in place. Now what I can do here is just, I could preload this. I guess the idea is that as you tighten this, it expands the rubber, right? Obviously, as you know. So that's good for now. I'm just going to leave that for now. I just wanted to get that set up. I still have to add the bullet connectors on the end of these. So that's good. So the next step is going to be doing the clutch side. You can see there that I've marked the 2 holes for the switches. So I'm going to remove this, drill into that, and then we'll get the switches on that side. Now I sat on the bike probably about 6 times making sure. So just really make sure before you cut into these bars that's what you want to do. And I've done it. I probably sat on the bike more than 6 times, probably 10 times, just to make sure, because I made enough mistakes on this by rushing things. So don't rush this process. We're going to get these bars all cut up. What I'm going to use here, this is a good little tip that someone showed me, well my dad showed me this. You get this little punch here, and it has like a little bit of a point at the end. Then when I get this in the clamp, put that nice and tight, and then I'll use this with a hammer and just mark the spot which I want to start drilling, and this is really great guide for your drill. So you could, like, it makes a little divot, and then the point of the drill just kind of sits right in it, and it's perfect. I'll make a few of those, and then we'll get these drilled up. So you can see I got all my strings through. Just got to pull the last one through. So again, just using, oh god, it's trying to get away from me there. Just using this hook. This is a fucking, if this works, I'm gonna shit myself, because this is gonna be hilarious. So now the idea is to take each one of those strings, tie it to the bullet, pull one at a time through. Ha! It fucking worked! Woo! Pretty sweet. So, now I can fish this bitch through. That guy's gonna sit there just like that. Cool. So there you go. So that's looking pretty cool. Alright. One more to go, then I have to get the signal light wires through there as well. This is going to get a lot trickier now that this big fat wire is in the way. Anyways, it's coming along, slowly but surely. Alright, fast forward a little bit and you can see that I have the controls mounted onto the left handlebar here, which is pretty sweet. It's looking pretty nice. Check that out. So the wires are all through. The bullet connectors are all ready to go. So this is going to go into my headlight. Now the only thing that's left is the left signal. Now I have to fish that through, but here's the fun part. The guys that did my wiring harness lost a bag of parts that comes with the signal, and has all these extra bits of rubber that are specific for certain size bars, and they lost them. Now I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if you can even order just the bag of parts. Pretty frustrating. So now I have to wait. So that's gonna be put aside. The next thing I'm gonna work on is the tachometer. We're gonna get those wires set up. So you can see here I have my Chrono Classic tachometer. So this comes with like a setup, like a prong plug setup here, so that you modify the wires that you need to plug into this. And as you can see from my wiring harness here, there's a bunch of things I need to tap into, like the high beam, low beam, the signal lights, the power, speedometer, RPM, so for my tachometer. And then it comes with this bag of connectors here, and you can see that, and you just crimp those onto the wires, and then it comes with a similar plug, a female plug, that will connect to the end of these once you get all your wires connected. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is grab the harness again and then modify those wires and fit on these plugs so that I can plug it in when I'm ready to go. I have my ground, my power, my two signals, my neutral light, and my high beam. So this is all good. So now I just have to go ahead, make a list of wires that I need to connect from this to the tachometer. And one side will have a bullet connector, and the other side will have the connectors that came with the tachometer. So I'm going to go ahead and start making up these wires right now. That's just going to really add an extra little bit of protection there. But there you go. So that's the connector done. So now I can take this, take it to my signal. This is my right signal power, so coming out of the M unit. As you can see on the diagram, coming out of the M unit, the right turn signal gets split at the M unit. One goes to the rear, one goes to the front. Comes to the front and then gets split up, and one goes to the light itself to power the light, and then one goes to the tachometer to power the indicator light. And that's what this little wire is for, so I'll just plug this bullet in. So that bullet's all plugged in. Now, this is ready to go into the female plastic, this guy. After I go through all the wires that I need to connect to this, I'll simply slide all of them in here, corresponding with the order on the other one that comes from the tack, and then they just slide in together, and you have yourself a tack set up. So I'm going to go through all these wires that I need to connect to my tack and make sure everything's set up before I get this on the bike. Alright, so as you can see, I'm in a pretty good place. What I've gone ahead and done is put on I have my ground connection, my signals, and my high beam here. Then I just have to do one for the neutral light, and then the one I'm working on right now is the power one. So basically it comes with this little fuse box. You can see here, this little fuse box and a fuse, and these connectors for the wires, and a spring that sits inside the fuse box here. Save that piece. Tiny, but it has a little flat spot there that will correspond with the end of the thingamabobber there. So I'm just going to trim back a little bit of wire. I pull that through and that's sitting there perfectly. So when I put in the fuse, it'll butt up against that. So you can see this is the one half of the wire finished off. See, it looks really nice with that piece of heat shrink there. I did put another piece of heat shrink where the connector was, and then double it up here. So it's just extra secure. That's not going anywhere, and that's a really nice wire there. So I'm going to finish up the other side now. Starting the other wire now. So this will have the butt end that the fuse sits on, and then this side will be the female connector for the tachometer. So like I said, I just have a little piece of heat shrink. Just going to slide that over there. Just make everything nice and neat. Now I'll slide in the other half of the fuse holder here. So that sits inside of this guy like that. And you can see that's kind of loose there. I don't like that. So that's why I put a piece of heat shrink on the end of the tube here like this, sitting over, just overlapping everything. And I'll show you what that looks like. We have a fuse holder. Two connections go together. Boom, bam, boom. Just have to put the female connection on that side. So now I have the fuse and the spring. So get the spring in there. So just get the fuse and the spring together. Twist that together. Boom, biggity. So I have my fuse, my bullet connector. I can connect that to the aux output here. Get that in there. Get this other side connected to the tachometer. It's looking really nice. Really pleased with that. Now I just have to line up and set up all these wires that I made. So you could see all the connections I made for the tachometer here. So that's all done. These are all into the harness. This is perfect. So now all I have to do is take a look at the plug coming from the tachometer, and just it comes with this. So I'm going to slide all the connections through the back of this, and they have to correspond with the right wires. So take a look at my wiring diagram again, and you could see I have all those connections ready, and now I just have to make sure I look at the back of here and just line everything up that's going to correspond with each other. So I'm going to go ahead, start lining these up, and we'll get this plugged in. Well, we'll get the plug set up so that when I put in the harness on the bike, it'll just be a plug-in, and that'll be it. So I'm starting to go ahead and plug these in. You can see that's a nice little plug forming there. And just keep in mind that when you do plug these into the back of this connector, they do go a certain way. And I'm finding that they go face up because there's a little tab at the top of this connector that once it slides in, it kind of locks it in place. So just be mindful of that. So I'm going to go through the rest and get these all plugged in. This bad boy will be ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead, just make sure it fits. So that slides in there, and all the wires on this side correspond with all the wires on this side, and that's looking really nice. This is all nice. This is when I get this connected. When I go to connect the tachometer now, when I go to set it up, all I have to do is, well, I have to mount it and everything. That's going to come at a later time. But all I have to do is take these connections, connect them up, and I'm good to go. Pretty much all that's really left to do before we can get the harness and the battery box and everything on the bike here is setting this bad boy up right here. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to clean this out, I'm going to glue it up, then use a heat gun to just mold this thing in here. And hopefully I won't have any problems. I bought some epoxy. Let's get this in place. And this is just what I want to do today, is use a heat gun because it's fucking 1,000 degrees outside. It's a little piece of sandpaper in here. Just kind of tuck it in there. Sort of roughen it up a bit. Just to give something for the glue to stick to. Good old acetone. I'm just going to use this. Clean up inside. Make sure that's super clean. You know, it's a little rougher. Hopefully it'll take to the glue and the heat. Just put a nice thin layer. This is my particular light, doesn't come with a sticky backing. That's why I'm having to glue it in place here, just in case you're wondering. So I'm going to use a heat gun now. And then help this take form. And I'm going to let that sit for a good week or so. Really let that firm up. So while that is drying on the back here, what I've done is I've stripped back the wires. So there's 4 wires here. Here you could see what I've done here. Now I got this trick. I looked at the harness that Spark Moto made for me, and I noticed that with the thinner wires, with the smaller gauge wire, or the higher gauge I guess, because as the gauges go up the wire gets thinner and thinner. So what the guy was using was, he was just taking a little piece of green wire or whatever kind of wire and just splicing it in with it, making it a little thicker. That way when I put in the bullet connector here, it'll crimp on a lot better and just be a more secure fit for this. I'm sure you could get smaller bullet connectors, but I don't have any on hand, and this is a good solution for that. So just a little tip there that I learned. I thought I'd pass it on. I've been doing that with the other smaller wires on the extra wires that I needed for like my signal lights. My Motor Gadget signal lights they're really quite small, and then just like a little neat thing I found was working for me. So I'm going to go ahead and add all the bullet connectors here, and that'll be ready to go for when we get the battery box in place and the harness, start getting that on place. But I think that's going to be another episode because this one's running a bit long. So we'll get this done, and then I think we'll wrap it up. Now just to go just a little bit over the top with this, but not even really, just to make this a beautiful, nice connection that's going to work for you. You'll have this little green wire sticking out, and you're going to say to yourself, that could cause a short, and it could. You're right. So just drop the bullet here. So what I did was I just got a little piece of heat shrink, crimped it on. So you want to put your heat shrink on first, slide that over the wire, and you're going to crimp here. So you're going to slide this over these two. So that's in place. Now I just have to crimp this connection on, and it'll look like this when it's all finished, and it'll be nice and ready to go. So it has a nice little heat shrink on the back, nice and secure. That's not going anywhere, and that's a nice tight connection. So I'm going to do this to all 4 of them, and I'll be right back when that's all done. Alright, that's going to wrap this up. So there's all my connectors. I lied to you before when I said I needed female ones back here. I actually needed male ones. So anyway, so here are my connections for the light. So that's all finished up, and I think that's going to wrap it up for now. So that is there. We did a lot of work there. I can't even remember all the stuff I did. With the electrical stuff, this is a continuation. The next process will be getting the wiring harness on the bike, getting all the components inside the battery box, and just getting everything sorted out in that regard. I have to wait till I find those pieces for my left signal. I can't put that left handlebar on until I get those pieces. So I don't know if I'm gonna have to order a new pair or get the guy at Spark to send me another pair. I don't know. So that's gonna be coming up. We still need to put the chain on and get the clutch sorted out. I'll look forward to doing that in the next episode or in the near future. And also, we'll finish up the wiring harness, and I'll go through it again one more time for you guys, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page and we all understand how this stuff works. And like I said, in retrospect, I really wish I built my own harness, but when I ordered the thing in December, I didn't really know too much, and I was really intimidated on the wiring process. But I know you guys can do this stuff. I'll go through the wiring harness with a fine-tooth comb next time on the next episode of Saturday's Wrench. And really, there's nothing to it. It's just a bunch of wires with connections on the end of them in a wiring loom with some heat shrink, and it looks really fancy, but at the end of the day, you could build one in a couple hours time. That's all it really needs. It's a time-consuming process, but honestly, I had a lot of fun doing the wiring. It was really cool adding the connections and getting all that stuff sorted out, and I really just feel really good about my whole harness, and I think it's going to be a really excellent harness, and it hopefully won't cause me any problems in the future. So thanks for sticking with me, guys. Thanks for all your support, and please get out there, finish those projects up. If I can do this, anyone can do this. And don't forget, I'm not a pro at this stuff. I'm an amateur, just learning as I go. So take my advice with a grain of salt. Do your own research, get on the forums, ask lots of questions, ask me questions, send me anything you guys want, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. So get out there, guys, finish those projects up, and wrench it up. Until next time, guys, we'll see you on another episode of Saturday's Wrench.